Hey everybody, what's going on? This is Marq, Cruise Director on the board of the Carnival Venezia. First and foremost, I want to say if you haven't had a chance to subscribe, make sure that you have a chance to get into a Coach Cruise. We're celebrating. We got a lot of fun going on, and I can't wait to be able to see you guys around. So make sure you watch, like, and subscribe.
Appreciate you. All right.
Let's have some fun.
All right. Well, I am here with Marq, the inaugural Cruise Director of the Carnival Venezia, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But I got about a dozen questions here for you, sir.
Let's do it. Let's have some fun.
Yeah, let's do it. So let's get right into it. Your path to becoming a cruise director, and I know we just came from the Diamond Platinum event, and you actually discussed kind of what started that journey.
Yeah.
But your path to becoming a cruise director, and when did you want it? Like, when did you say, you know what, this is what I want to do?
Yeah. So funny enough, when I started with Carnival, I came on board because I just wanted to have a good time. So I was really enjoying just being a fun squad. And I thought, maybe one day, someday, I could possibly be a cruise director. And we had an emergency situation on one of my ships. And after 3 months of being with the company, I had to cover as a cruise director. So I stepped up to cover. And from there, they actually asked me to become a part of the fun squad of the inaugural for the Vista. And so I went to go be a part of the fun squad, was working with icons like Jamie D and Matt Mitchum that were the ones that were on the ship. And after being on the Vista for about 9 months, I had an opportunity to cover as a cruise director. And that was when it kind of became more surreal. And so at first I was just loving being a part of the fun squad. Didn't necessarily say, you know what, I'm going to be cruise director. It was just about having a good time on the ships. And next thing you know, within a year, I stepped up as cruise director.
You know what, and it seems like there's always, small world and everything. But at Carnival Vista, you mentioned that debuted in 2016, right?
Yeah.
Because we did our first Mediterranean cruise then, and it wasn't just yourself. So yeah, I was with you, and I didn't even know. I wasn't paying attention, right? But I mean, there was other cruise directors
that came from that group.
Yep. Could you mention them?
Yes. So there was Noelle Jones. She stepped up as cruise director right after I had. Cookie, Jonathan Adams also stepped up as cruise director. Orlando was also another cruise director that stepped up out of that group. So out of this whole group of us there, and then Courtney English now actually works for our shoreside, and she became one of our entertainment directors. So it was crazy how all of a sudden this group of people that were inspired to be able to kind of keep moving forward just blossomed off that ship.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, the next question I have for you, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm wrong often, so maybe I'm wrong on this. But since the celebration, I think the Venezia was next, and then the Jubilee and the Frenzy. Is that the order of the last 4 ships of inaugural cruise director?
Yes, as of today, at least. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And so, I mean, speaking of inaugurals, and obviously they're not giving inaugural cruise director to everyone or just anyone. I mean, it's Carnival feels whoever the best is, they're going to get that honor of being an inaugural cruise director. So can you discuss how that all came together and how you felt when they said, hey, we want you to be the inaugural cruise director of the Carnival Venezia?
Yeah. Well, because she's my baby, and I was actually corrected by the president of Carnival Cruise Line herself, because she had come on board. It is the Carnival Venezia. Venezia.
Okay.
And so because I had thought it was Venezia as well. And so I was saying it, and then she came on board and was like, nope, that's not it. And I was like, oh, great. Nothing like the president telling you that you're wrong. And so at first when they called me about it, I genuinely thought they called the wrong person. I was like, oh, there's no way that they're talking to me about it. And they had just said that when it comes down to it, I've had a chance to be able to bounce around in the entire fleet. I've had a chance to be able to show my talents, and I've become a name that's well known enough. And so they said, you do a great job, and we'd love to offer you out of New York. And I was like, they were like, are you there? And I was like, yeah, I'm just trying to take it in, because I wasn't prepared for the phone call to begin with. But I was also just very overwhelmed with joy and a sense of pride, just because, as you said, it's not something that everybody has an opportunity to get. And so the fact that my time came on this stunning ship, she is gorgeous. I think the biggest thing for me is also watching her grow from when we started up until now has been probably one of the most rewarding things, because I've seen the trials and the tribulations, and now the fact that, you know, after a year she is going strong and she's doing really, really well. It's such an honor to be a part of it. So to go from that sense of like nervousness of like, am I actually going to be good enough to be, you know, the Matt Mitchum that I watched bring out the Vista, to Mike Pack, who brought out Horizon, and Emma Nixon, who brought out the Pano, and then the pandemic shut us down. So then to come back and watch all of some of these XL classes of ships and my name being in the midst of all that was, yeah, it was crazy, but it was so rewarding, and it's been very humbling as well. So
absolutely, very cool. All right, now, I mean, kind of to touch on the same thing, speaking of inaugural cruise directors, but obviously, you know, you're one of the most beloved cruise directors within Carnival. I bet, seriously, I mean, I posted a picture of you and I when we were in Grand Turk the other day.
Yeah.
And, you know, on my page, if there's like 100 likes or loves or whatever, that's usually a pretty good thing. There's like 350 in accounting.
Oh,
and
wow.
I'm like, I only posted 3 pictures, one of me in the water in Grand Turk, one in front of the ship, and one with you. And I'm like, I posted pictures of myself before, it hasn't gotten that much love, so it's got to be you.
Oh, thanks, man. Thanks.
But, so, you know, what do you feel cruisers see as some of your best attributes that makes you one of those most loved cruise directors within the fleet?
I'm not sure. I think I've been doing this for long enough that, and I always say I don't have enough energy to be 2 different people. So you kind of get what you get. And I think the fact that I am just the same person on the stage as I am off the stage is one of those things, because I think there's a lot of times where, especially right now, as we've got a lot of cruise directors that are up and coming and that are finding their balance and their comfortability, I think there's sometimes where they emulate what they've seen before. And so I think that as they're still trying to develop themselves and getting to that point, it's becoming more natural. But I think the fact of just being able to just go with the flow and just have fun. And I always say, I don't care whether people laugh at me or laugh with me. As long as you're here and you're laughing, that's what it's all about. So let's just have a good time and keeping it honest. So I think that's probably one of the biggest things. I will also say, I think some of the parties that we have around the ship are pretty entertaining and top notch. And I think also the fact that I never wear the same thing twice in a cruise also keeps people on their toes. And so it's always something different. It's always something different. Talk to my cabin steward. He doesn't like my laundry selection, so I'm just saying.
That's funny. All right. Now, you mentioned several cruise directors already. Are there things you like about any other cruise directors that you would like to, you know, apply more to your style, or no? Like, if there's anything you say, like, oh, I love how they do this, or I love how they do that, I wish I did more of that, or is there anything?
I think one of the things about us as cruise directors that I love the most is that none of us are the same.
Right.
We're all our own individuality. And I think that is one of the best things that I love most about Carnival as being a cruise director, is that they allow us to not always have a script. We don't have to read to be the same person here, there, and everywhere. And to be able to find how to pull ourselves into it is something that's so cool. As I've been doing this for a while now, I think I've seen so many cruise directors come and go. And so finding certain things that they do, I'm like, oh, that is really, really cool. But at the same time, I also appreciate the fact that they have a talent to be able to say those certain things and to do those certain things. But that doesn't mean that I have to necessarily do it. I think there's strengths and weaknesses in all of us as individuals, let alone as cruise directors. And we all bring a level of entertainment that work for us. And so I think there are cruise directors that are in the fleet, and by cruise directors I mean each and every single one of them, that inspire me every single day, because I watch the people walk off the ships and I watch the comments that come through, and to know that they're out there working so hard to be able to keep the level of fun is an inspiration on its own. And so for me, I wouldn't necessarily say that I look at them and say, oh, they did this program like this, I'm going to restructure my program to be like that. If anything, I look at it and say, wow, what they do is incredible. I hope I can bring the same level, and then see if I can be able to like get up to a certain level of my own fun within that to be able to keep the excitement going. So yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a deep question there.
Yeah, it is a deep question, but I like it.
All right. Well, the next question's changing topics here a little bit.
Hit me with your best shot.
Okay, so we are in Viaggio, and I have eaten here twice. And It's been absolutely amazing. Like some of the best meals I've had on Carnival ever.
Same.
Right here. The Mile High
Gelato pie.
Oh my God. Like I would book it just to eat that again. Like,
Right.
It
Right.
doesn't even matter about the stuff beforehand, which is all excellent too. But the Mile High Gelato pie, you got to book a reservation just to eat that.
Yeah.
So, with that in mind, how difficult is it to stay in shape when you have endless great food choices?
Look, here's the thing. I'm very flattered that you say stay in shape, because at the end of the day, I am a shape, and that is round, and that is but that is just me, and it always will be. But I think because of the fact that we've got such great food on board, it does make it a little bit more difficult in the sense of being able to like do that and then go to a deck party or something. But at the end of the day, it's all about balance, right? So, you know, you get a little bit here and a little bit there. And I mean, obviously portion control is something I do so well at. But I think it's just moderation and, you know, being able to know, like, you know, maybe I'm not going to come to Il Viaggio every single night. Maybe it's like a once a cruise thing, or, you know, like I love to be able to take my team out to dinner, and my team love going to teppanyaki. So being able to kind of choose, okay, here's this, you know, once this week and once that week, or you know, otherwise, you know, just eating upstairs on the Lido deck, because then it's also like, for me, I actually love that, which I know sometimes is hard to do, but being able to kind of eat with the people, it keeps it more fun. And then I think if anything, it just, when people always say to me like, oh my gosh, you're the celebrity, and I'm like, no, it's just me, like, it's just Marq, like, it's just me. I think I am hungry too, so I sit and eat just like you guys do, and so like it's days like that it's just like, I'm just gonna eat upstairs with you guys, hang out for a little bit, chat, chill, talk, because sometimes to me that's more fun than doing the on-stage stuff. So
well, and you know, I didn't even have this as a question, but something that I've noticed, because I've gotten the opportunity to cruise with, you know, Kendall and Cookie and Lee Mason, and just several times, and I've just always been amazed at how, you know, they can walk through a hallway and they're touching base with almost 50 out of 50 people that they pass, and sometimes it's just like, hey, you know, what's up? Hey, you know, what are you eating? Or what are you doing? You know, but I mean, even if it is just a couple seconds, you know, that's going to be memorable for that particular cruiser. Because they're going to be like, hey, you know, the cruise director saw me in the hall and said, hi, what's up? You know,
and honestly, before I came to ships, and even as a fun squad, I never really realized the true power of a cruise director. And that was, it actually kind of hit me a couple of years ago, when, I'll maybe tell you at a different time, but I had a situation where I had a kid that came on board who had a severe form of cancer and didn't have much time to live. And by kind of accident, he came up on stage, and I just deemed him as my assistant cruise director, not knowing who this kid was. And on the last day of the cruise, I met his mom, who told me that he was here because he wanted to see as much of the world as possible. And it kind of broke my heart, but also like inspired me to keep going at the same time, because I realized I don't know why people come to cruise. I don't know what makes you say, this is the time in my life that I want to be able to get away from what is reality. So to be able to reach out and to talk to people, and to take, even if it's 30 seconds or if it's 10 minutes or an hour, to sit and just be real with someone, to know that I have that amount of time to pull them out of what their reality is, to have fun in that moment, is one of the most powerful things that I ever have received from this job.
Absolutely.
And that's why I don't even look at it as like a job, because now it's me fulfilling the role in life that I have.
Very cool.
So, yeah.
Very cool. Well, next question, I guess, your top 3 moments while at Carnival. What would you say your top 3 moments while working here at Carnival? Not necessarily as a cruise director, but it could all be as a cruise director.
Yeah. Well, so right now I'm coming up on my 9 years with Carnival, and 8 as a cruise director. So majority of my time with Carnival has all been as a cruise director. So most of it does come from the role of being CD. But if anything, I think my biggest moment to recognize is getting the call to be a cruise director for the Venezia. The second one would definitely be being called and asked to cover or to go to the Vista as a part of the inaugural team with that whole startup. And I'd probably, as cheesy as it's gonna sound, was the first time that my mom came and sailed as a guest.
Wow.
And had a chance because she and I started the cruising together, and then I decided to come onto ships. And so I think when she saw me do this for the first time, she and I had a conversation, because like our tradition is always to go and get ice cream at the end of the night and celebrate and just talk about the day and stuff. And she just looked at me at the end of the week and she just said, "I'm just so proud of you." And it was like, it was like that moment that I was just like, oh my gosh, like what I'm doing is actually making a difference. And like, you know, having like that mama proudness is, it hits different. So I think those are probably like my top 3 moments that I would say, like walking away, that I would always just look back and be like, if anything, those are like my 3 shining moments on it.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, and since you mentioned that, I'll be sure to include the story you shared in the Diamond Platinum.
Oh, great.
About the 6 years of no cruise
waiting
before you finally got on the cruise ship. So
for anybody watching, if you ever meet Mama Jean and she talks about making plans, please don't let her do it. Do it yourself.
There you go. Or it might happen. It just might happen 6 years.
6 years in the making.
All right.
Oh, man.
Okay, so a couple embarrassing moments as a cruise director.
Yeah, where do I start? To be completely honest, there's not a lot that I get embarrassed by. I will be honest about that. I've been doing this long enough where, like I said, I don't care whether people laugh at me or laugh with me. As long as we're here to have a good time, that's perfect. With that being said and done, I have had some moments where I walk away like just cringing of life. And I hate to say that I've probably been doing like the wobble too hard sometimes, where I think I've gone through maybe 5 pairs of pants over the years of just like dropping down too low. And as I talked about, being the shapes, round being a shape, I have definitely dropped, and I can't say I ripped my pants. I say that I busted out of them like a can of biscuits. Like I just, so that would be, I can't believe I just told you that. Another one would have been when I was doing a deck party. We were doing a deck party, and I was dancing on the bench right in front of the pool, and it was a little rocky, so the water was kind of rocking back and forth, and what I didn't know was that it was splashing the bench. So they are very waxed, and when I took a step back, my foot slipped, so I slipped off the bench, fell into the top part of the water, and then as like my body kind of bounced, I fell into the pool.
Yeah, that's not embarrassing.
No, not at all. Not at all. Everybody was like, "Oh!" And I was like, "Ha ha!" Saved my microphone and everything. And then I was like, "Pool party!" No, I didn't yell that. That was not one of my most shining moments on stage. There was a time, oh my gosh, there was a time that I forgot the captain's name during the captain's welcome.
Oh, yeah, that's important.
Yep, that was pretty embarrassing. Because the team rotates, and I, for the most part, know everybody, and I hate having a lot of things in my hand that I have to like focus on, because I just feel like I get a little overwhelmed with having too much to worry about. And so I work down the line to figure out, okay, who is here? So when I do their introductions, it's all coming from memory. So I had 2 new people that were right in front of Captain. So as I'm focusing on, don't forget these names, don't forget these names, don't forget these names, all of a sudden he's standing there, and I was like, yeah, so that was fun. And then as I had this moment of panic, my hotel director just leaned in and goes, "Seriously?" And I was like, "Ugh!" So he luckily helped me whisper it out, and I was like, "Yes!" So I shouted out Captain. That's
funny. Yeah, well, it happens, right? All right, so this one, I always like this question. I've asked this question several times in different interviews.
Okay.
But something unique about yourself that most people would be surprised by? Something unique about yourself that most people would be surprised by.
I think I surprise people a lot of the time when I go out for like my deck parties and stuff, and when I dance. And size is part of it. But also one of the things that people don't know about me is that before I actually came to Carnival and was working on ships, I was actually part of a Michael Jackson impersonation group for 6 years.
Oh, wow.
So one of my best friends and I had done it when we were in high school, and then when Michael Jackson passed away, we decided to get the band back together. So we revamped the show, and then we ended up by like touring the show. So we had about a 2-hour performance that we literally were taking around like the Midwest and stuff. And so not only was I a production manager for the show, I was also a backup dancer. Oh, wow. So dance has been something that's always been in my background. And so when I get out there and I do whatever, people are like, we didn't think you would be able to move like that. And I'm like, yeah, sometimes neither do I, but like these knees and the snap, crackle, and pop is a lot more realistic than than when we were kids. So yeah. So I think that's something that surprises a lot of people that I would say is relatively unique. Other than that, I don't know. I think I'm unique just like anybody else, and we're all different, and it's our uniqueness that makes us cool. So yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, if you weren't a cruise director, what career path do you think you would choose?
I don't even know anymore. Are you talking about maybe like on the ship?
No, I mean, if it was
Just in
outside
general.
of cruising, do you see another career path maybe you were interested in prior to
So
cruise life?
So I have a whole life before Carnival, and I worked in St. Paul Aquatics, where I helped oversee over 3 water parks and a beach. I was also a stage manager at a children's theater for 12 years. I worked at our Regents Hospital, which is our level 1 trauma hospital. So I worked in our therapy pool, as well as hand and physical therapy. So I've kind of done a lot over my years. But that's always the hard thing, is that people always ask me, like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I'm like, look, I barely know where I see myself next week, let alone in a year to 5. And one of my biggest things is I don't necessarily have an answer to that, because if I start pushing myself to think about what's the next step, then that means that I've got 1 foot in and 1 foot out. And when I was working as a stage manager at the children's theater, we would always tell the kids, look, at the end of the day, you've got 30 performances. We understand that by 25, you're starting to get tired. You're starting to get over it. But they're here for the same experience that the people on the first night got and deserved. So make sure you keep it going. And so that's always been like my mantra, is that at the end of the day, I don't want to be half in, half out, checked out, because I don't ever want anybody to be like, oh, he didn't care.
Right.
Sometimes I think I care a little too much. I was actually on my evaluation last time, if you're watching. And I think that there's an element of like truth that goes to that it's like I care that people are here to have a good time, and that they're here to get away from what is reality. So I don't know. I feel like I'll cross that bridge when I get there, but also I think one of the hardest parts about being a cruise director is that being a cruise director, I have a chance to oversee a team. I get to make operational changes for an entire city. I get to work with so many people from all over the world. I get to travel for a living. And so it's when I look at it, I've got all these little things that my job breaks down to, but this doesn't apply to life on land. And I think that that's a hard thing to be able to say, like, what is out there, because I would have to kind of pick 1 or 2 that would be able to be a career for me. So I'm not 100% sure on that right now. And when the time comes, I'll follow the path that's there, and and what comes my way, and keep having fun with it, because life's too short to not enjoy what you're doing. So
absolutely agree with that. All right, so you already mentioned that you worked on a few ships. What were some of the previous ships that you've worked on, and did you have any favorite among those? And then maybe a ship that you haven't been on that you would like to work on?
Yeah. I started off, so the Magic was my first ship that I worked on. So you always have love for your first love. So the Magic has always got a special place in my heart. I went to the Vista as part of the inaugural team as the Fun Squad. So that has always been a staple and a part of my heart. And then the Splendor was the first ship that I was on as like an actually established cruise director. So that ship has always been like my bread and butter, and that I always think back to, even with her pink polka dots and donuts and stuff. But then obviously the Dream was the ship that I was on for return to service, which was to be completely honest, was one of the hardest contracts, because that was coming back and people expecting what used to be our new, our the same way of life, but we had everything that was changed. The world had changed. Right. So that was really tough, but my team made that contract for me, and so I will always have like a soft spot in my heart for the Dream. And then the Venezia has been just, she's beautiful, she's amazing, and again, she's my baby that I've watched grow from the start. So those are like my favorites. I was also on the Fascination, was my first cruise as a guest, but then I also went back and was a cruise director on the Fascination, so that was kind of cool. I was also on the Elation, the Inspiration, and then I went to the Magic again as cruise director. I was on the Breeze as cruise director, Liberty, and then came back from pandemic onto the Dream, and now the Venezia. So I've had 11 ships that I've worked on. But yeah, I think the biggest thing is, like, I will say, the hard part about answering that question is, as guest, you enjoy the ship for the luxury, the ability to sit and enjoy, or the restaurants, or the itineraries. Where as crew, we don't get to necessarily enjoy the same amenities as much. So to us, I find that it's the memories that we make on the ship that make them most memorable. Right. So that is why that's a hard question for me to answer, because the experience is what makes the ship most memorable for me.
Absolutely.
And my favorites.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, that's a great comment regarding that.
Thanks.
Next question. I only got a couple more here for you.
Okay.
But Venezia, did I pronounce it?
Yeah.
Venezia, the Venezia. So the Venezia is a very different experience than most typical Carnival cruisers might be used to, and that's one of the things that attracted me to wanting to come on here, and to meet yourself, definitely as well. But and I have enjoyed some of those experiences, the different food menus, the different drink menus, that just a different experience in general. So what advice for future cruisers coming to the Venezia on how to get the most fun and the most,
absolutely,
the best out of cruising with that Italian style theme? Or
yeah.
whatever?
Well, to be completely honest, it took me a minute to adjust, just as much as it took our guests to adjust, because everybody came in and they looked at the Lido and they were like, well, this isn't a Carnival Lido. You're right, it's not the Carnival Lido. This ship came from a different company that had a different mentality. And I've come to realize that even though the structure of the ship is different, the integrity and the heart and the meat is still the same. We're still here to have a good time. We're still here to have fun. We just have to do it with a little different twist. And so for anybody that's thinking about coming to the Venezia, be prepared for everything. Be prepared for all the fun. Make sure that you take a look into all the specialty restaurants, because they are different. Make sure that you go to Rococo, because it's not Red Frog Rum Bar or Blue Iguana Tequila Bar, right? It's something different. And so I think the biggest thing is just be prepared to know that it's okay to not always have the same experience, and that you're just going to walk away with something a little different. And we hope that everybody likes it. But at the same time, like right now, we've got 4,900 guests on the ship. That means that we're gonna have 4,900 different opinions on everything, from the color of this candle to how high the light turns onto it, to the angle of it, and that's okay. Everyone's got different taste, and that's really cool. We're just here to provide a different experience that on this beautiful ship is a little bit more fancier than some of the other ones that we might have on the fleet, which is cool. Right. So just be prepared for the same fun, just with a little twist, and to know that different is not always a bad thing. It's cool.
And this is totally opposite, but you just made me think of something, because we were in Half Moon Cay yesterday, and you just mentioned 4,900 guests, and I hear these numbers all the time when talking about cruise ships. Oh, this cruise ship holds 6,000 people. This one holds 3,000 people, and it just starts to become a number that you don't really think much about, but that number came into reality yesterday when we were at Half Moon Cay for the first time. As many cruises I've done, I looked on that beach and it was packed.
Yeah.
From one end to the other, it was packed. And I looked out and I saw one ship out there, and I'm like, all of these people, this
are on that
packed
one.
beach,
Yeah.
are on this one ship. And
Yeah.
I'm like, how can they do that?
Yeah.
Because I mean, it looked like a packed beach. And it's like, how many ships do we have in port today? Do we have 3
Yeah.
ships and they're all sharing?
Just
Is it
one.
just one?
Yeah.
So I mean, that really helped put into perspective
Sure.
just how many people
Yeah.
these ships hold.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, or
It's-
trying to reach all the guests, and
Excuse me. I think one of the hardest things was when I took my first cruise. It was the Fascination, and it was our fantasy class ship. So it's the smallest that we have in the fleet. And like walking up to it, I was like, oh my gosh, this thing is massive. And I remember looking at it for the first time being like, I'm gonna really get on this. And then you get inside and you realize how spacious it is, and there's all this room and stuff. And I was like, this is really cool. And then when I went to the Vista, so you go from one of the smallest in the fleet to the biggest at the time. And I remember sitting there looking, and we had docked with one of the other fantasy class ships, and I remember looking down going, God, like that. I was like, oh my gosh. And it's very interesting because we always, while you look at the ships and everybody gets like an ooh and ah, for me, the first time that I realized like how much space was really around was actually when I like looked down a guest corridor for the first time, and I realized like the hallway just kept going and going and going. And then when I realized like if you take all the rooms and multiply those over, I was like, that's actually a lot of space. And then when you spread that out and you also have all the public areas of the atriums, or as we call it, the Piazza San Marco, and then the restaurants as well, and the even just the general hangout areas,
Right.
piano bar, the gondola lounge, which is our Ocean Plaza, all these areas that people get to hang out with. And it's like, yes, people want to be able to go to Lido, and yes, sometimes it can be really overwhelming because there's a lot of people there, but there's always enough space for people just to be able to do what they want. Whether you want to sit out and lounge, there's chairs all around the ship. If you want to have a chance to be in the activities, we got programming all the time. So it's cool to know that we found the secret sauce to be able to make sure that all the fun is happening and everybody has an opportunity to find their fun. And I think that's when Carnival came out with the idea of choose fun. I was like, yeah, because at the end of the day, Coach, what might be the most amount of fun for you is not the same that's going to be fun for me. That it could be to Karen when she comes in, or with Cheryl, who's got the 4 kids that want to be able to have the adventures, and the kids might have a different idea of fun.
Right.
And I love that we have that ability to always say, you have a choice in being a part of whatever fun you want.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah.
All right, I think this is the last question I have for you.
Okay.
But, you mentioned several people so far, but mentors for you prior to becoming a cruise director, and then to go along with that question, I guess a follow-up question, have you had any Fun Squad graduate or feel like are on the brink of becoming a cruise director?
Yes. So in the 2 parts of that, so first and foremost, my mentors before I was a cruise director were Dr. Everson Bevel. Dr. E was the first cruise director that I worked with. After that, I had Wee Jimmy. He knows my Wee Jimmy, and he was about this tall and just amazing. And then I worked with Steven Schwartz, Matt Mitchum, and Jamie D. And then there was also D Walsh. She was also in for a week. So they all gave me different levels of inspiration. They like being able to watch them shine and knowing that, again, one was so different than the other and could pull off something that somebody couldn't, and everything is an inspiration. And I just looked at them like they were these, and again, it's weird that I refer to them as the celebrities of the ship, because now that I'm in that position and I don't even look at myself as like a celebrity of the ship, but I was just so enamored by what they could do and how they could move a crowd and keep people excited. And so those were like my mentors right off the bat. And then Matt Mitchum and I had so many sit downs in his office when he was just like, if you want to be able to keep working on it, you get, take a look at this, try that. There's also a woman on our shoreside team. Her name is Jocelyn Blanford. And she and I had a sit down, and I will never forget this day when we were on the Vista. I had told her, I was like, like one day, someday, I want to be a cruise director. I think I could pull it off, but I love what I'm doing. And she's like, great, talk to Matt, sit down, here's all the things. Like, she's like, I've witnessed this, try that. And it's funny because she's now part of our shoreside representation. And I look at her every day and I'm like, without having that conversation, and she was blunt and honest about it, about, you know, not really great on this part of things, but like work on that. And I was like, okay, cool. And then Matt came right in afterwards. And next thing you know, after that conversation with Jocelyn, I was the first one of the Vista team to step up and out to be cruise director. And so those are the ones that I that kind of mentored me. And now I look at, again, as I said, everybody has the strengths and weaknesses and then can pull, because what we do is not easy and not everybody can do it. That's why we only have 40 some cruise directors in the Carnival fleet, because it's not meant for everybody. Yeah. And I look at all the cruise directors that I work with now and I call them my mentors, because I listen to what they go through and I look at what they do and the smiles that people walk away with, and I'm like, I'm inspired. You push me to be the more authentic, the more true, and always striving to be able to keep the smiles happening on the ship. So
a quick question before you go on.
Yeah,
I know there's been a couple cruise directors that were cruise directors outside of Carnival that Carnival hired, so then they directly went right into a cruise director. But you mentioned it, were you the fastest ever, like, to go from fun squad to cruise director? Because it seems incredibly fast. You're just very small time in fun squad.
I don't know if I am the fastest, but I definitely know that I was one of the fastest. When I had to step up and cover, I had been with Carnival for 3 months. Okay. And when I got the call when I got called to the office and they were like, hey, we've got a situation, we need you to cover. That was a moment that I was like, So then going from that to being surrounded by some of the best at the time, Nono Jones and Cookie and Courtney English and, being under the wing of Matt Mitchum, it was just one of those things where it was like, this is really happening. And so when I was the first one of that team to step up, they had all been with Carnival longer than I had. And I had a conversation with our pro DJ, and his name is Blends, DJ Blends, and he is by far one of the most amazing and incredible individuals, let alone talented DJs that I've ever worked with. And he had said, never feel bad for when your opportunity comes. And it pulled me back, because I realized that I was thinking about everybody else and the fact that they had been with Carnival. But he said, your talent shines and you have an opportunity. And so I decided to go with it, knowing that their opportunities would come. And it just made me feel better about knowing the fact that I had put in the work to be able to have my opportunity come at it when it did. And so now when my opportunities are there, it just means that that's my time to shine. And so, so I don't know if I was the fastest, but I'm privileged and honored to know that my talents had a chance to shine at the right time that it did. And here I sit 8 years later as a cruise director. So
absolutely,
yeah.
And then like, are you starting to bear some fruit in terms of are there
my
some
babies?
Others? Yeah. Are there some future cruise directors that are on the brink, or have you had one or two that have gotten an opportunity yet? So right before the pandemic, I had Brittany Rojo was part of my Fun Squad team. She stepped up as a cruise director. Leilani, also known as Lele, she stepped up as a cruise director. Robbie Howell has stepped up as cruise director. Cheeky Charlie stepped up as cruise director. So these are just a few of the names that I've worked with. Rico was also a fun squad with me on the Elation, as well as now his fiance, because they're getting married really soon. Lizzie is also a cruise director that's now in the fleet. So Lizzie and Rico are currently still going. So those are just some of my babies that I've had a chance to be able to watch grow and blossom, and to know that they had the opportunity was just so cool. So all right, very cool. Well, I tell you what, this has been amazing. I've loved the interview.
Good.
Great, interview, certainly, without a doubt. And obviously one of the most popular cruise directors within the Carnival fleet. If you haven't gotten the opportunity to cruise with Marq. You know, definitely put that on your list. You know, if all things are the same and you're trying to decide, this cruise or this cruise, I'll flip a coin. Let Marq be the deciding factor. But thank you again, sir.
Absolutely.
And look forward to cruising with you next time.
Yeah. Well, I'm here until September, and then Lee Mason's going to take over the Venezia, and then I'll be moving to Port Canaveral. Home for me will be the Vista next, so I'll be going. So I will. Kind of a fun little aspect of it is that every ship that I have been on, once I get to the Vista, I will have been cruise director on.
Sweet.
So yeah, so the Magic and the Vista were my two fun squad ships, and now I've gotten the Magic, and now I'm going back to Vista and close that loop.
You reminded me, and I think I am happy to say this, but I do believe you're going to be on the Vista New Year's Eve.
Yes.
So I will see you there.
Yes. Okay, let's go, Coach.
That's good. All right, so that's it, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the interview as much as I did with Marq, and we'll see y'all later.
See you guys. Thank you.
All right.
Unfortunately, my grandfather had passed away. And when he had passed, my mom was having a really hard time with that because she was a daddy's girl. So she said, you know what, I want to kind of think about the way that we do our holidays, and instead of just spending money on clothes that, you know, you guys grow out of, or toys that break or disappear and stuff, she said, you know what, let's save our money and do a family vacation, because the memories are something that we can't get rid of. And that was something that her dad was always a big fan of. So we said, okay, that sounds great. So we're like, this is gonna be really, really cool. So we started saving up, and we get to the end of the year for the holidays, and unfortunately it didn't happen. So, okay, no worries. So then the next year, she's like, you know what, okay, now like let's start looking at places. She wanted to go to like Jamaica, South America, South Africa. She had all these ideas in her head, and we got to the end of the year, and it didn't happen. Okay, so finally the third year, she's like, no, this is going to be our time to shine. So we're like, now we're all excited, we're all motivated, we're looking at places, and we get to the end of the year, and it didn't happen. Okay, so whatever. However, the fourth year, all of a sudden one of her friends had gone on a cruise, and so she's like, well, why don't we try that? Like, that's not something we've done, so let's go on a cruise. And we're like, sounds good to us. Like, let us know the plans, we'll all pay into it, and we'll do it. So we get to the end of the year, didn't happen. Okay, so the fifth year, now, like, this is planning with Mama Jean. Fifth year, she's now most motivated. She's sending us itineraries, ports of call, like all these things, like the news like clippings and all these things that we can just prepare for. So now we're like all like gung-ho about this. So now the buildup has happened. We get to the end of the year and no, it didn't happen. So right after that year though, she calls me and I was at work and she's like, hey, if I give you this week, would you be able to take it off? And I was like, well, I've got a ton of PTO. Why, what's up? And she's like, okay, I'm gonna call you back. So she calls me like 4 hours later and she's like, I did it. I was like, you did what? And she was like, I booked a cruise. And I was like, wait, seriously? And she goes, yeah, but the thing is the girls, being my sisters, can't take the time off of work, so it's just us. So as a grown single man, I had my first cruise with just my mom. No, hold on, because here's the thing. So she told me that the way that the bookings happen is that it's going to be 2 to the room, so we were going to have to share. And I was like, ugh. And then she said, but because the rooms are so small, there's only 1 bed. When we got on board, we opened the door and we only saw 1 bed. And I was like, oh no. So immediately, like, I went over trying to see if I could pull them apart. Come to find out that they were 2 beds. So I put them in the farthest corners possible of the room. And then our cabin steward came to introduce himself. And I was like, this is my mother. And he was like, oh, I'll take care of it. And I was like, I already took care of it. Because it's already awkward enough when we're walking around the ship and all the photographers are like, oh, cute, kiss, kiss, kiss. Anyway, so it's the first night of the cruise. We don't know up, down, left, right, port, starboard. All these words are being thrown around to us, and this is before the app, so when things were a little bit more difficult to kind of navigate around. So we end up by getting kind of like bombarded, and we get pushed to like the right direction, and we get like sucked into the dining room. Now, when we got into the dining room, we got sat at this huge table where there were a couple that were platinum, a couple that were diamonds, and then there were a few gold cards.
So we're sitting there, and as we're like all going around the room trying to awkwardly talk about ourselves and stuff, you know, they're all talking about their status and stuff, and we were like, we're first timers, we don't know what's going on. And they were like, oh my gosh. So they unleashed. They were like, you gotta look into this, try this, do that, be here, and all these things. And we ended up by having such an amazing time. And I ended up by meeting so many of the team members that are here on the ship, not here particularly, it was actually the Carnival Fascination was my first cruise. And we had such a great time, and these team members like pulled me aside later, and they were like, have you ever thought about working on a ship? And I was like, I'm from Minnesota, we don't work on cruise ships. And they were like, that's not a thing. And then I ended up by walking away from the ship, having such a great time, and I thought, you know what, this seems like something that I would love to be a part of. I would love to be able to kind of turn it back around. And now, 9 years later, I have the privilege to be able to provide y'all with the same experience that y'all set me up for.
Hey everybody, what's going on? This is Marq, Cruise Director on the board of the Carnival Venezia. First and foremost, I want to say if you haven't had a chance to subscribe, make sure that you have a chance to get into a Coach Cruise. We're here, we're celebrating, we got a lot of fun going on, and I can't wait to be able to see you guys around. So make sure you watch, like, and subscribe.
Appreciate you. All right.
I just can't get away from a good time.